Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's TAFSIG Spotlight on Standardisation session. So my name is Eddie Cowling from the University of York, and this has been co-organised with Dina Strong. Dina, give us a big hello.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
Thanks, Dina. Thank you. And I can see we've got a few other TAFSIG committee members with us as well. So Phil, I think Chris is here. So a warm welcome from all of us and TAFSIG, and thank you very much for attending. We've had a lot of interest in this. Over 100 have signed up to register, and people are still filtering through now and just joining us. So we're really glad that we've had such a lot of interest, and we hope that this hour is useful for you. This is the first of our Spotlight On series, and if it's successful, we hope to continue them and kind of focus on different aspects of EAP assessment and feedback and test design. So hopefully this is the first of many. For those of you new to TAFSIG and haven't attended events before, so we are part of the BarLeap Special Interest Group community. We share knowledge. The idea is we share knowledge, ideas, practice, and research on assessment and feedback in EAP. Please visit our website. It's going through the process of a bit of a revamp. Graham's hard at work on that, so do keep coming back and revisiting it. But there's past events on there, lots on there that's hopefully of use. Follow us on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. Please email us. You can join the TAFSIG mailing list as well. If you want to, please contact any of the committee members or that main BarLeap TAFSIG email address and we'll get you signed up. We should say any publicising of events, we do send them through the BarLeap list as well. Join the TAFSIG Piloting Network. If you Google TAFSIG Piloting Network, you'll find all the information, but we're talking about, improving assessment design here and assessment processes, and the piloting network can really help with that. If you're unfamiliar with that, please do go and check it out, and do look out for future events. We hold regular coffee club events, as I say, hopefully more spotlight series and other webinars and that kind of thing. Okay, so just before we outline the objectives, the structure of this session, just to briefly clarify what exactly we mean by standardization, at least in the context of this webinar and how it's commonly understood in EAP and language testing circles. So today, we're exploring ways to improve what we would call inter-rater reliability. So that's to say, essentially, consistency agreement between two or more markers, raters, observers in their assessments. Arguably, this is much more common and challenging in EAP when you consider marking teams, the number of markers involved, the high stakes assessments involved, and also the types of markers, particularly pre-sessional programs where you're aiming for consistency and reliability across teaching teams where you've got visiting teachers, visiting markers on short-term contracts, maybe unfamiliar with the assessments, the marking criteria, the standards. So for today, we're paying particular attention to the standardization meetings and activity, which usually happens before markers then go off and do their own independent marking. So in contrast to other stages of marking, such as moderation, second marking, we do, of course, appreciate there are huge overlaps there, and sometimes these terms are used rather interchangeably. And that's not to say that we won't meander into those areas of marking as well. But primarily, we're looking at those kind of pre-marking activities. So we have been conscious for a while within TAFSIG that standardization can be a really tricky process. There's no perfect process. Variability is understandable and inevitable. But hopefully today we can learn from others' experiences. We've got some fantastic speakers to tell us about how they do it and the challenges that they face. But also, hopefully, you'll be able to discuss and share ideas and challenges with others in the community and make contacts, connect with peers, and all in all, hopefully improve your future practice. Dina, do you want to tell us a bit about the structure of today's session?
Yes, thank you, Eddie. I am Dina Strong, and I'm based at King's College London. And I wanted to say a couple of things about today, the structure of today's session. So as Eddie has already mentioned, we are going to start with some lightning talks. So, we have four speakers from four different institutions who we are going to introduce in a moment. They will hold just a short presentations. They will tell us about the approaches that they use at their institution and also the sort of challenges that they have faced when conducting standardization. Because we are quite a large group and because we only have 1 hour, we thought that maybe Padlet could be the best solution for our interaction for the time being. So as you listen to our four lightning talks, I will post in a moment the link to the Padlet. Feel free to post your comments or questions. You can tag a specific speaker or you could just address everyone. I will share the link shortly. So as you listen to the lightning talks, feel free to interact through Padlet, through chat. After that, we'll have a possibility to discuss maybe emerging new questions or some suggested questions or whatever is on your heart and mind in the breakout rooms. So this will be a great possibility to meet people from different universities, share ideas, hopefully maybe even come up with solutions, maybe find new questions that please do post them in the Padlet. Again, it will be still the same Padlet staying with us throughout the session. And we hope to come back at the end all together and maybe to discuss some final few questions at the end of the session. That's about it, right? And we were initially supposed to have five speakers today. Unfortunately, Craig Davis from the University of Manchester was unable to join us today, but hopefully he may be able to participate in our discussions on Padlet after this session. So we'll have the first speaker today will be Nick. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your surname correctly.
That'll do, Dina, that'll do. Close enough.
I know how terrible it is when people call me Dinah, so please, apologies for that. And then Nick is from the University of, is it de Montfort International College, right? And then
Close enough, Dina.
Yeah, I'm getting better. Right. Thank you. And then we'll have, I'll probably stick just to the names here. Joe and Jeanette from University of York, Eddie's colleagues, and then Tom from Kaplan International Pathway. And then we'll have our fourth duo. It will be Katie and Hannah from University of Bristol. Let's welcome then Nick.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thanks, Dina. Thanks, Eddie. I think you probably put me on first because mine is a pretty boring approach, or let's call it vanilla approach to standardization, an approach that I've certainly experienced in various institutions that I've worked in. So in short, essentially the system we employ is prior to tutors marking, we give them 2 scripts or 2 recordings if it's a spoken assessment, and they go off and mark them. The way we select these scripts is either if it's an existing assessment, so something that's been done in the past, we'll grab 2 from previously moderated work. We'll have a quick look through, the module leader responsible will have a look through, make sure that it looks like it's been marked well. If it has, then that's what we'll use. If it's a new assessment, then we'll obviously have to wait until some assessments come in, and then 3 members of the senior team, or minimum 3 members of the senior EAP team, will sit around, come up with an agreed grade, and in either case these are considered to be the gold standard. So these are non-negotiable marks. Once we've decided as the senior team what the marks should be, then that's what the marks should be. The scripts or recordings are then sent out to the tutors. They'll mark them in their own time, and then we'll all come together for a meeting. We'll discuss, depending on the size of the meeting, potentially discuss in pairs. If it's a smaller meeting, discuss as a whole group, go through everybody's grades. Any sort of big differences, then we discuss it in more detail. If things are fairly well aligned in the first instance, then we'll give a little bit of feedback, but essentially that means all good and we'll press on. And then we'll present the tutors with the gold standard grades. If there are tutors who are miles off, then we'll arrange individual meetings with those tutors. Thankfully, it doesn't happen terribly often. And we'll also share feedback as well. So with existing assessments, we'll share the feedback that was given at the time. For new assessments, then the senior team who've initially standardized that work will come up with some feedback. Essentially, we think feedback's an equally important part of the standardization process as the marks themselves. So we make sure that that's all part of the process. A couple of things that we've tinkered with in the past and ditched. We used to provide one script or video as a benchmark. So tutors would look at the grades, look at the feedback, and then mark a second script. We've ditched that just because we heard on the grapevine that some tutors were perhaps not fully examining the benchmarked script. So the one that had the grades and the comments on was perhaps not being scrutinized as robustly as we wanted. So we threw our toys out of the pram and said, right, fine, if you're not going to read it properly, then you can just mark 2. And another thing we tinkered with, which I believe some of the subsequent speakers do use, we tried using MS Forms for a while to collect feedback rather than the approach of gathering feedback live and in a meeting. We felt that would give module leaders a bit more time to look at the differences between grades, sort of prepare a little bit better to justify what we felt were the correct grades. However, we were always beset by IT problems, people saying that they'd sent forms in and we'd not received them, people struggling with access to the forms, etc. It was something that it became useful during COVID, but now that we're out of lockdown and we're all back face to face, we feel that we don't really need that anymore. So we've bypassed the tech issues and just gone back to the old school method of the meeting face to face. And that's about me. I hope that was 5 minutes or potentially a bit shorter.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Nick.
You're welcome.
Lovely. All right, we will go straight over to Joe and Jeanette then, please.
Okay. Hello. Okay, so hi everyone. Jeanette and I are from the University of York, and we work on the International Pathway Colleges pre-sessional course. We're going to focus on the process and the challenges of the standardization here at York. So first, I'm going to talk to you about the process, and we run the same type of standardization process for all 4 skills. So whoever runs a standardization session during the induction usually does the preparation for it. So I was in charge of the writing and the speaking. So I collected samples that we gathered from last year, and I looked at the criteria and the samples, and the samples that we choose are usually samples that have been second marked from last year. And then I look at the criteria of the samples, give marks, match the descriptors with what's in the essay or the presentation or the reading. Then the whole pre-sessional team meets because the samples have been sent to everyone. So we have a team meeting and we go through what grades we gave and why. The team meeting is with all the coordinators and the program leader. So once we have decided on what the final grades are, everybody shares their feedback forms, which have been sent to them with the samples. And on those feedback forms, everybody writes what they gave the scripts and why. We also say why we don't think it's a 60 and why we think it's a 55 and things like that. So once I have everybody's all the team's feedback forms, I collate everything and I put them on a final feedback form. Then during the pre-sessional tutor induction, which is usually held 1 week before the teaching starts, Padlet is shared with the tutors who are on the pre-sessional course. This Padlet has an assessor's guide, which has lots of information about the criteria we use. It has guidance on feedback and lots of interesting guidance. And this Padlet also has the samples and the criteria. The tutors are asked to look at the samples and the criteria and give their grades. They then, a few days later, we run the standardization session. All the tutors come together with whoever's running that standardization session. We put them in groups and they discuss their grades, what they think, and then we all meet again and in the same session, and we discuss what the pre-sessional team had given and why. It's a discussion. We say we think this essay should get this grade because of this, and we're always matching the criteria with elements from the essay, the reading, or the presentation. And then once everybody has been standardized, the feedback forms have shared on the Padlet. And now I'm going to hand over to Jeanette, who's going to talk about the challenges.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Joe. I'm going to talk about the challenges with the pre-sessional standardization at the IPC. So we have 3 challenges here. The first one is the timing of standardization. We're not sure when the best time is to hold these sessions. We usually have them in the induction week and sometimes a reminder session before the marking starts. Though we have tutors joining up to week 3 of our course, which means we have to repeat the standardization session, and it isn't the same when they complete the standardization on their own rather than with a group. And as you know, the standardization sessions are also time-consuming. The second challenge is using benchmark samples. We are interested in tutors marking students' work individually. We found that sometimes tutors start using the benchmark as an example rather than using the descriptors on the marking criteria to award the mark. And our final challenge is the power dynamics during a standardization session. We found that strong characters can influence conversation or the marks in a live standardization session, especially as our groups are quite big. So someone quiet could be influenced and potentially question their own experience. We've also found that varying levels of experience in a standardization can influence someone. So those are our 3 biggest challenges. We're happy to discuss some solutions together and answer any questions when we have the chance toward the end of the session. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette and Joe. Thanks a lot for this. Can we invite Tom?
Yeah, 1 second. Let me just
When
share
you're ready.
When the screen shares. Okay. Is that visible? Okay, good morning, everyone, or afternoon even. I'm very pleased to be here to talk about the method of standardization we use on EAP at Kaplan International Pathways. My cat amongst the pigeons is that this is an asynchronous standardization method. So just a bit of a note on our context. We are a large network of higher education foundation colleges. We are 9 colleges on university sites, as well as an online offering. Every year, that network caters to over 5,000 students across these 10 sites. And these students start the English for Academic Purposes courses at different points throughout the year. A lot of our students start in September. We then have a large number of students that start in January. We have additional courses throughout the summer and then a number of intensive courses in between. So assessments are done at different times, marking teams come together at different times, but crucially, the same standard is held for all the students across those 10 contexts. So it was in this realm that we decided to move toward an asynchronous method of standardization delivered via our virtual learning environment, and it comes in 4 stages. So the first stage, we call it acclimatization, is where the trainee marker is shown the marking criteria and is asked to reflect and delve into what the different columns of the marking grid, as it were, task achievement, language accuracy, language range, etc., catered to and what those descriptors cover. So this is a good reminder for experienced markers, but it's also a good introduction for new markers. We then have an illustration stage where markers are shown 4 samples of student work that have been benchmarked by a panel of experienced EAP markers. They're shown this work alongside the commentary that the panel produced to justify their marks. They then, as a formative exercise, drag and drop what language band they think was assigned to each criterion. So did task achievement get a 55 or a 60, for example? This just sort of sets the initial stage when they are shown the actual answers, because they put those drag drop and they see the actual answers afterwards, shows their initial expectations and how they line up with what the benchmarking panel reckoned. We then have a practice stage, which scaffolds this process further. It's 4 further samples with partial commentaries. So neither the marks nor the commentaries are visible for certain columns on the criteria, so for language range. And the markers are asked to put what they would give that sample in the boxes, as you can see on the screen, and give their overall mark. This again is formative. This just either affirms or tweaks those initial expectations. We, as it were, summatively test the training using the final stage called marks collection. The markers are shown 2 samples of work that have no commentary and no marks visible, and they're asked to mark them. If they allocate the correct language band for those 2 samples, they are considered to have passed the training. If they haven't quite got there, they are given 2 further samples. They're shown the marks for those first 2 samples, then given 2 further samples to mark. If they get those 2 correct, and there's a bit more of a tolerance on the second time around, they are then considered to have passed. Otherwise, they have to go and receive some more synchronous in-person support. So very quickly, there are 3 benefits we like to this process. One is that it's authentic. The marks collection stage is individual, like the marking process, which we quite like. The other is that it's inclusive. I agree with what Joanna and Jeanette were saying about power dynamics in a meeting. A meeting also doesn't necessarily test whether everyone has met the standard. It also can work around other commitments that maybe fractional members of staff might have. This is to do with its third benefit, the flexibility. This is a self-access package. Markers can be directed to it at any time, at any point in the year. Just to speak to the challenges, though, in terms of implementation, it was quite costly. So we reckon it takes about half an hour to benchmark a sample in a meeting of the benchmarking panel. So if you need to benchmark 12 samples for a pack, that's 6 hours. You need to do the marking beforehand. You need to do the agreeing the commentaries afterwards, put that alongside other responsibilities. That's a bit of a pain. There's then the potential that tutors may disagree with the markers may not agree with what the panel's assigned. With that comes possibly demoralization. So people will maybe be experienced teachers, they get told they haven't passed standardization. That's not the best feeling in the world. And this kind of links to this question, is this depersonalized because it's automated? This is very possible. However, my final thing I'm going to say is that I was in a staff room when people have been doing this training the other day, and they were all talking about it. So there's a question about whether it's depersonalized. One element of it is, but maybe it isn't as a whole. But anyway, I'm going to come to an end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks a lot. Very interesting indeed. All right. Could we invite now Katie and Hannah from Bristol?
Hopefully you can see my slides. My name is Katie Burrows, and I'm the assessment coordinator at the Center for Academic Language Development. And Hannah and I are going to talk through our process. And we're going to look at it in Hannah's course. So she's subject lead for language and communication. So we'll talk about what it looks like over the first 12 weeks of that course. In Welcome Week, our teachers get to know the unit, they get to know the assessment, the criteria. They can look at it on Blackboard, they can look at the assessment brief, can look at the criteria. And our teachers are usually teaching on more than one unit. So we have tried to standardize our marking criteria in some ways across the center so that it's easier to have reliable marking. By the end of week 2, people complete the first part of our marker training, which is asynchronous. And that is similar to what we've heard before. So people are looking at samples. There's a high, medium, and a low. These are the benchmark samples. And these are annotated and marked. And they submit 1 to 2 sentences on the weakest, about the weakest sample. So that right from the beginning, we're putting feedback in the middle of it, where people are looking with a purpose about what students could improve. This is what it looks like, and I think Tom has already spoken to the amount of time that this takes to create. So we have all the annotations that were made last summer by pairs of teachers. The marks are agreed by 3 people, and then there are paragraphs that go with each of the marks. By week 6, teachers complete the second part of marker training, which is to then complete a form where they look at 2 samples and they actually mark the papers. And what we've added is a step where they get instant feedback, because we were realizing later if people come to a meeting, they don't remember what marks they gave or how it aligned. So as soon as they submit their marks in part 2, they get, a paragraph of text around each of the scores so that they understand why they were high, if they were high, why that wasn't right, etc. So they get that in the moment they need it. And then I'll hand it over to Hannah, who can talk through the synchronous part.
Let's see if I can share my screen. Katie, I think you need to stop sharing yours.
Okay. This could be my glitch.
All right, you can just keep it on. No, all right. Did that work? Can everybody see that okay? So, yeah, we've only got a small team of 15. So the next thing we do is a familiarization session, and there we all discuss together to the understanding of it, the task instructions, and before they actually teach. So in week 7, students are introduced to the assessment, and obviously the materials on the course, they unpack the criteria and they go through the task instructions and support the students doing that. Week 9, they submit their first draft, they get feedback, then they submit their final draft. So then in week 12, so the students have submitted their draft, and 2 live scripts are then selected. So all the team mark these independently, and the subject, so that's me, the subject lead, and my course coordinator, who's also a teacher on this. We have a meeting, just the 2 of us, where we agree marks and rationale. And then I prepare a presentation, and we also use Microsoft Forms for teachers to put in their criteria. So for example, I'll show you the criteria in the next slide. Sample 1, 63, 65, 60. So I think Joanna will remember our criteria and the columns and everything. So then I put all this information together, and we have a calibration meeting. The whole team discusses the marks and the rationale, and I'm happy to move marks up and down if, once we've had even more discussion about that. So yeah, that's what it would look like as an example. And yes, so then markers have marking buddies if they've got any tricky scripts that they can check any queries with each other, like what do we do when this happens, what do we do with that, or they can come to me or the course coordinator. Have nearly a couple of weeks for the grading the feed forward comments, and then it's on to moderation. We do 10% of the scripts, and maybe we have to go back to the teachers and get them to tweak marks or tweak feedback so that they're adhering to our feedback baseline guidelines. And then we hand it over to the professional services team. And yeah, we have a really firm turnaround of 15 working days. So in this case, students got their grades back around 17th of January. There's the feedback baseline. I will share these slides with you so that you can read everything quickly, and that's the end of our presentation.
Okay.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Hannah. It's really interesting. Thank you all the speakers. It's been really interesting. One of the our fears when we were setting this up was that everyone would come together and basically be like, well, don't we all just standardize in the same way? And it soon transpired not the case at all. And we were discussing more with other colleagues in the community, and everyone goes about these things slightly different, whether it's asynchronous, synchronous. So lots of variations in the process and also in the success of the different approaches. We would really like, and I've been in webinars before when as soon as there was a mention of breakout rooms, the figures plummet. So please don't all leave. Everybody is friendly. Everybody is just wanting to learn from one another. So please stick around as we set this up. Dina, do you want to just talk us through, and I'll start looking at the breakout rooms?
Yes, we would really love to continue the conversation, and as Eddie said, I think it would be wonderful to come together. We'll try to set up fairly large breakout rooms, so you have a variety of people present there. So I just wanted to tell you before you are sent to the breakout room, could you please make sure you join our, you click on the link we've shared earlier in the chat to have a look at the Padlet. Padlet includes the 2 questions that our lightning talks were focused on. So you may want to continue this or reflect on what you've heard. We've also put together some suggested guided question if you feel you run out of things to discuss, which I'm sure is not going to be the case. So there are a couple of questions over there. I've added also Tom's slides here. We'll add the other slides in a moment. Thank you. There's there are some questions, comments, I think, here already. So you may want to discuss this. Feel free to comment. Feel free to discuss, to add something, write something. And I hope you have a very enjoyable discussion. We'll be in the breakout rooms for about maybe 15 minutes or so before we come back together. So feel free to also add any questions you'd like to discuss in the plenary there. Okay. Hi, welcome back. Thank you very much for your discussions in the breakout rooms. I hope you found this useful and inspiring. We just to kind of draw this this webinar to a close, we wanted to invite you to share maybe some interesting ideas you've heard or you have shared with others today. Maybe was there anything that you're still wondering about, or are there any wonderful takeaways that you'd like to bring and share with everyone here? This is your chance, right? Feel free to unmute yourself, raise the hand, or use the chat.
I had one question. Hello, thank you for the presentations, everyone. If there's a test, I'm thinking of a context like a pre-sessional. If there's a test which is a new type of test, does that make it potentially more challenging to standardize on the first attempt? The reason I say that is because perhaps the kind of gold standard marking might take some time. It's just a thought I had. If there's a new variation of a listening test or speaking test or reading test, is that tricky to implement initially if you're one of the more senior people in a university?
Okay. Oh, thank you, Alexander. Nick, did you want to respond to this?
I've put my hand straight up because I've literally just come out of that exact meeting before this one. So as I was saying to the people in the breakout group, we've had to change all sorts recently in response to AI and how that's changed the nature of assessment and what we're looking for in students. Yeah, absolutely. It makes things more challenging, 100%. You've got, firstly, the time constraint of actually having to get some assessments in. If we're talking about productive stuff, you know, you've got to get the stuff in and then really quickly mark it and get it turned around in time for the module leader to hold a standardization meeting before the tutors actually start marking. So that puts a lot of pressure onto the process and quite a lot of pressure on the senior team to say, right, come on, we've got to mark this now. which is where we've just been. You mentioned tests as well, which is quite interesting, actually. I don't think we've really been talking about exams, which we do for receptive skills. I'm sure that's pretty standard, listening, reading exams. We don't standardize the exam per se. When we mark, we mark as a group, so any queries that come up are dealt with there. But certainly implementing the test, I mean, that's a whole new webinar, isn't it? So I won't go into it, but getting a test ready and being confident that it the results accurately reflect what the test should reflect, or in line with previous tests, other tests, etc. I think it's a massive area and very challenging. So I don't think I've answered the second part of that question, but it's an interesting one. There you go, Eddie and Dina. There's your next webinar.
I know, I know. Thank you.
Cheers, Fanny. Really good question, that, Alexander. And yeah, just going to take the opportunity to plug the piloting network for those that are developing new tests and need to try them out. The TAFSIG piloting network can really help with that, put people in contact so you can try out these new tests with individuals before it's then used on a live cohort. So please do check that out. Have we got time for one more, Dina, do you think?
I think there was one more question on the Padlet that I wanted to share from my colleague Alistair, right? Thank you, Alistair. I posted it in the chat. I took a screenshot. So Alistair is asking, he's saying, having to talk about feedback expectations and answering questions about the assessment and discussing the standardized marks of the 2 or 3 samples is a challenge.
Can I come in? I've got a bit
Yes,
of background
please.
info, so background noise.
Go,
I'm a bit worried about the microphone. Yeah, it's just one of my takeaways from this meeting is that maybe we should break the standardization into steps, and that idea of kind of pre-standardization at the beginning of the course, which some of our pre-sessional colleagues have been doing really well. And maybe I was also thinking maybe we could do that in induction, maybe, if we had time. I'm teaching on a foundation, but also maybe another session before the standardization where tutors could just ask questions about the assessment type, or we could talk about how to give feedback for that particular assessment. So maybe I could just channel all those feedback questions and all those, how do I mark this assessment, and what does this mean in the criteria, those kind of questions. Maybe we could get those out of the way first, and then we just focus entirely on those 2 or 3 scripts and standardization. That's what I'm thinking at the moment, but whether we'll have time for that is another issue.
Thanks, Alistair. I don't know if we have the possibility to discuss this, but the Padlet is there and it's available for you, and Alistair's question is in the Padlet. So if you'd like to comment, or if you're able to share some tips, suggestions, or personal experience, we would really appreciate it. Yeah, the Padlet is staying.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alistair. Thanks, Dina. Yeah, do please continue the conversation. Remember to connect with us. We'll share our slides. So you've got the links to all those different ways of connecting with TAFSIG. And Dina's will continue to add stuff to the Padlet as well. And please do continue your questions on there. Look out for our future events. Our coffee clubs, we'll send them through the Barleap list, as well as all the other usual channels. And the recording of the session, except for the breakout rooms, of course, certificate of attendance, the slides, the resources, they'll all be shared soon as well. But yeah, thank you once again for all those involved, all of you attending and staying on throughout the breakout rooms, and particularly for our speakers. So thank you very much indeed. And we hope to see you again soon.
And just a quick thank you to Eddie and Dina for putting on a great session and organising, getting the speakers together. So thank you both very much.
Nice one, Phil. Thank you. As the chair of TAFSIG, everybody, thank you. Or co-chair, sorry.
And yeah, to echo that, thank you to you guys, and thank you to everyone for coming and participating.
Lovely stuff. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
Thank you.